When two roommates are just hanging out at home, eating snacks and watching a little bit of television, they have no idea that they're about to see a warning sign that the universe may be glitching out. And then we travel to Pennsylvania to take a look at the story of a man walking home one night when he sees a terrifying sight. But is it possible that what he sees is no ghastly ghoul, but a teacher from another time? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. Hope you guys have some awesome plans for the weekend. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Everyone get on your feet and give it up for one of our legacy Patreon supporters, Default Cecil. Woohoo, yeah, wee! Haha, yeah, he's all running on in, super excited, wee! Default Cecil in Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Default Cecil, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the Patreon or the merch store or anything like that, that's okay. It really is. But what you can do is help spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Default Cecil, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to toss you the keys to the good old-fashioned Jason Jalopy. Everyone climb on board this car as Default Cecil fires it up. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Why don't you drive us all the way out to the suburbs? And as we're headed out there, let's go ahead and take a look at our awesome submission for Fan Art Friday. That is from Joe via Twitter. Joe, thanks so much for sending this over. If you don't know what that is, you're like, what? This doesn't make any sense. It makes sense to me and Joe, of course. It's an inside joke. Only we know it. No, there's a very famous musician right now. I like her. I listen to a lot of her music, called Sabrina Carpenter. She's often seen wearing a shirt, a long white shirt that says Jesus was a carpenter. And Joe thought, yeah, that'd be cool if she wore a shirt that said Jason is a carpenter. And we both chuckled. And she sent this over. And yeah, that would be awesome. So Sabrina Carpenter, if you're listening to this podcast, wear that shirt. Also, get that tattoo. If you get a tattoo of the Dead Rabbit Radio logo on your leg, Miss Carpenter, that would be fantastic as well. That'd be definitely promoting the show. People are like, what? What does that mean? She's like, it's nothing. It's just the mole. Joe, thanks so much for sending over this picture of Sabrina Carpenter. And also, let's go ahead and talk about, as I'm staring at the picture, I was getting distracted. Also, November 8th through the 10th is the Port Gamble Ghost Conference in Port Gamble, Washington. It is going to be a fantastic time. I will be a presenter there. I will be giving my presentation on whether or not the U.S. government is investigating ghosts, which is something I've talked about a lot on this show, and we're going to do a presentation on it. I hope it's entertaining. That's a big question mark, right? I'm like, I hope people enjoy this. November 8th through the 10th, Port Gamble Ghost Conference. For more information, go to portgamble.com. Default Cecil has been driving the Jason Jalopy for about 3 hours at this point. I'm going to be totally awesome with you. Might have been 4 or 5 hours, honestly. I started to record this episode, right? I was ready to go. Everything was cool. And then I just didn't feel the first story. I just couldn't get it right. So I went on this 40-minute long rant. I wouldn't say it's a rant. I mean, you may disagree, right? But it was a 40-minute long diatribe. I go, I'm not going to talk about the first story. Instead, I'm going to talk about something I read on a celebrity gossip forum about an asteroid headed towards Earth. You're like, wow, what type of celebrity? Is it like Brad Pitt? Is he a shooting star headed towards Earth? Why are they talking about asteroids on a celebrity forum? Yeah, I thought that was weird too, right? It's that website I go to every night. I read celebrity gossip. It's my guilty pleasure. And they were talking about an asteroid headed towards Earth. Not a movie, right? A real-life asteroid that's being covered up by the media and the government. They were supposed to announce it in 2018 that it's going to hit us. But then COVID happened, and they figured, we got enough. We got enough on our plate. People are miserable enough. Let's just put this off. See how I told you that story in like 2 minutes? I spent 20 minutes telling that same story. And then I said it was 40 minutes long. I segued from an asteroid story that I read on a celebrity gossip site to COVID conspiracy theories. I mean, come on. Everyone still loves a good old COVID conspiracy theory. Start going on about that. It just wasn't that good. It wasn't any good. Wasted 40 minutes. I did say, I might release this as like a Patreon exclusive. Because I just kept talking and recording myself once I realized I was never going to release it. I go, maybe I'll put it up as a Patreon exclusive. But then I thought about it. If it's not good enough for the show, why would I be like, hey guys, thanks for giving me money each month. Here's some garbage that I won't let anyone else listen to but you. That's how much I love my Patreon. It's like, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time for anyone to listen to. But anyway, so we are back, though. It is 10:39 at night. This is like old school Dead Rabbit Radio when I did used to record really late a lot of the time. And I got a different first story. I think we're ready to go. You might argue whether or not it's a story you want to hear. It's quite creepy. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Default Cecil's driving us out to this house. It's Grandma's house, actually. We're going to Grandma's house. It's the 1990s. And we're about to meet this young girl. We don't have her real name. We're going to call her Jessica. And Jessica's staying at her grandparents' house with her sister, who we'll call Amanda. Jessica and Amanda are staying at Grandma's house. It's kind of cool, too, because they're actually staying in their mother's old room. This is the house that their mother grew up in, and they're in the room that their mom grew up in. That's kind of cool, right? It's kind of a little cool family tradition. So Jessica and Amanda, they're having a good time hanging out with Grandma and Grandpa. But one night, they'd already been there for a while. They'd already been staying there for quite a while. I honestly think it had been around a year at this point. They'd already been there for a while, quite a few weeks, not months at this point. I don't know if it was a summertime thing or if it was a work thing. Mom had to do this and da-da-da-da, but like a babysitter thing. I don't know. But they'd been staying there for a while at this point, and then one night, Grandma comes to Jessica and Amanda, and they said, hey, girls, how's everything going? And they're like, it's going pretty good, you know? And Grandma looks side to side. She goes, okay, well, that's good. I'm glad everything's going good. However, if you happen to be in the room, your bedroom, if you happen to be in your bedroom one night, and it sounds like somebody is trying to open the door, you should lock the door. And the kids are like, what? And Grandma goes, yeah, it's highly unlikely that someone's going to come in to the house in the middle of the night and walk to this door. But if that does happen, you should lock it. And the girls are like, okay, why are you bringing this up now? We've been here for a while. Oh, don't worry about that. And they're like, here's the thing. How do you not worry about that? You're hanging out at someone's house and they're like, oh, by the way, if someone tries getting in this room late at night, lock the door. I would just lock the door all the time. At that point, I'd be like, I don't even want, what if I sleep through it? What if I sleep through someone jiggling the doorknob, opening up the door? Weird. And the girls thought it was kind of odd because really the house is just Grandma and Grandpa and these two girls. So it's not like there's a roommate. It's not like there's a boarder. It's not even like there's a crime problem in the area. They just find it odd. But whatever. Okay, yeah, we'll lock the door if someone tries to get in late at night. It's kind of weird, but fine, Grandma, whatever. Well, one night / early morning, Jessica wakes up. And she's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. Okay. So she hops out of bed. She's sleeping in a trundle bed. I forgot to look that up. What's a trundle bed? Her and her sister are sharing this bedroom. What? That's a car. What, that trundle means heavy or slow. What's a trundle bed? Like a giant bed? Oh, okay. It's a bed that has like a pull-out thing. That makes sense because I know what's going to happen in this story. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was the thing. So it's like a normal bed, and then instead of underneath the bed, instead of a boogeyman enabler, as I call them, there's another bed. It's a bed and then a bed underneath the bed that you can pull out like a drawer. I'm like, wait, what is it? A drawer or a bed? What's going on? Is Jessica a little? She a tiny little person living in a drawer? It's a drawer bed or a bed drawer. Anyways, one night she wakes up. She's like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom. So she leaves the bedroom and she goes to the bathroom. After she's done going to the bathroom, she's walking back to the bedroom, and that's when she sees Grandpa sitting at the table reading the newspaper. And, it's early in the morning, but she figures, oh, Grandpa must be getting ready to go to work. So I'm going to go up and give him a big hug and be like, Grandpa, I love you. Have a good day at work. I'm getting in front of the newspaper. He's like, come on, I'm trying to read the sports page. She's like, look at me. Dancing on the table. She wants all the attention. She goes, oh, I'm going to go give Grandpa a hug. She walks across the room, walks up to the kitchen table, and that's when she realizes this isn't Grandpa. There's a man sitting at the kitchen table reading a newspaper. She's never seen this guy before. And she freezes in place. He's reading the paper, and then he turns to her and says, go back to bed. And she's completely terrified. It startles her. She doesn't know who this guy is. She doesn't know why he's in the house. And she runs. She runs from the room. She runs back to her bedroom. She locks the door. She's like, oh, this might be what Grandma prepared us for. She locks the door. She climbs underneath the bed and then pulls the trundle bed in as much as she can to hide her. And I didn't know what a trundle bed was when I read that description. So it's basically, she's kind of sandwiched herself in. So it would be harder for someone who was walking in to know she was there. Well, there's no knock at the door. No one jiggles the knob. No one tries to get in. You know what's interesting is looking at her post on this, she doesn't say if she directly told her grandmother and her grandfather about the man that she saw in the living room. I would assume that she did, and maybe the grandparents kind of hand-waved it away, but it's possible that she didn't. It's also possible that she was so scared, and sometimes we've covered a ton of stories like this where they don't tell anybody about things that they see. We don't know, though, what she said, but whoever the man was, she didn't see him in the house again. He didn't come to the bedroom door. He didn't try to get in, any of that stuff. But I chose my words very carefully when I said she didn't see the man in the house again. Because at a later date, she saw a photograph of this man. She sees a photograph of the man that was sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper. And she's like, what in the world? Hey, Grandma, who's in this photograph? Who is this? And Grandma walks over and goes, that is your biological grandfather. Huh? Yeah, he died. He died back in 1981. The grandfather that you know, and who loves and cares for you, and you love and care about him, he's my second marriage. He's not your mother's biological father. Your mother's biological father, your biological grandpa, died back in 1981. So, a ghost A ghost of the past, a ghostly grandfather sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper. When there's nothing but peace and quiet in the house, something that most grandpas struggle to get when they're alive, now he finds it in death. He can sit there and read the newspaper. And when he sees his granddaughter walking around the house when she should be in bed, what does he say? He says, "Go back to bed." That's not the entire story, though. Because what Jessica comes to learn is that her grandpa, her biological grandfather, he did die in 1981. He died by shooting himself. He killed himself after Jessica's mother accused him of rape. Jessica's mother exposed him for sexually assaulting and raping her, and instead of facing the consequences of those actions, he blew his brains out. Not a kindly, ghostly grandpa sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper, but a monster. A human monster now turned into a phantom. And Jessica believes this is why the grandmother told them to lock the door. If they heard anyone trying to get into the bedroom, their mother's old bedroom, where that grandpa would go. Jessica believes that's why Grandma said lock the door if you hear anyone trying to get in. And she said, she posted this online underneath the name DuckMom8909. She said that, they'd been at the house for a while. They'd been staying in this room for a while. And Grandma, when she said, if you hear anyone trying to get in at night, just go ahead and lock the door. She said that shortly before Jessica had seen her dead grandpa at the kitchen table. So she believes it's possible that her grandmother saw his spirit one night and was afraid what it might do to his two granddaughters who were staying there. She had not brought it up before, but shortly before Jessica saw her dead grandpa, that was when the grandma said, lock the door if you hear anyone trying to get in. It's an absolutely terrifying story. Like, really, when you step back and think about it, or don't step back. Like, just look at it as it is. It's terrifying. You do have this idea that this man did, listen, man, there's a lot of unexcusable things out there, but, a father molesting his own daughter. Anyone molesting anyone's horrible. I don't want to rank. I don't want to well, but this is worse. It's all bad. But there is a sense that I think this is why people find child abuse by a family, even like physical abuse or mental abuse, in a lot of ways worse than child abuse on the street. You're like, no, Jason, it's terrible all the time. I agree, it's terrible all the time. But the home, listen, if you're going to feel safe anywhere, it should be at your home. If there's anyone that you can confide in, if there's anyone that should be able to protect you, to mentor you, to keep you safe and teach you how to navigate through life, that should be your family. And I feel very blessed with the family that I've had. Because I know a lot of people don't have great families. And that sucks. Like, that is like I think that is the worst, honestly, when your family is terrible to you. They bully you. They don't treat you right. And sometimes it goes even worse. It gets criminal. It gets morally disgusting. It's stuff like this. I mean, that's bad enough, right? The father molesting his own daughter. But then, now he's a ghost. He's a ghost now. So, like, what do you do at that point? And Jessica said for years, Grandma kept saying, make sure the door's locked if you hear anyone trying to get in. Jessica had only seen the grandpa a single time. But the grandma reminded them for years. So it's possible the grandma saw him multiple times. Jessica doesn't know. Jessica does not know if the grandma saw the dead man. She assumes, that's like an assumption she makes. She goes, it's possible. Because it was interesting because she started warning them shortly before Jessica saw him for the first time. And I wonder if the grandma continued the warnings because she saw him more times. Because she may be up later. He may be affecting her life more. He may be appearing to her more. I also wonder if Jessica's sister, I forgot, what did we name her, Amanda? Jessica's sister ever saw her. Because again, this is something we talk about a lot on this show. We've covered a ton of stories like this. You have a family, let's say a family of 4, grandma, grandpa, and 2 girls. Sometimes there can be insane paranormal phenomenon going on, and we hear the story of one person, and then it ends by them saying, yeah, and then 20 years later, I was talking to my sister about it. We were out at Starbucks just chatting. I go, you remember Grandma's house? And my sister started telling me that she kept seeing an old man walk around the house at night, and she never knew who it was. And once he walked into the bedroom and poked his head in the bedroom and then left, and I didn't know who it was, but I was so scared. That happens a lot where people will experience paranormal phenomenon in the same household. They don't talk about it with each other because it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, and you think you're crazy for even believing it. Like, that's just the way that it is. So, it's possible the grandma was seeing him constantly. It's possible that Amanda saw him once or twice. Terrifying story, though, isn't that? That was creepy. I mean, I don't know when you're listening to this podcast. I'm recording this. It's now 11 p.m. I gotta go to bed soon. And I'll be completely honest with you guys. You guys can call me a wuss. You guys can call me a lame-o. You guys can call me a lot of things. But I have not stopped thinking about Smile 2 since I saw it. Like, that is a really good horror movie. There's a few scenes in Smile 2 that I feel for this generation are going to be iconic scenes in horror movies. I mean, and it's funny because when you're watching it, the particular scene I'm thinking of was kind of dumb. I kind of chuckled out loud when it happened because I was like, there's a close, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about it. It's so dumb. Like, when you see it, you go, what? That's dumb looking. It was like the special effect they did was goofy, but it was so effective. And again, like, I'm watching it on the big screen at the local movie theater. I'm the only one in the theater because I went to an early showing of a horror movie. I don't know what I was thinking. And I'm pretty sure the theater's haunted. Like, I've been telling myself, it's not haunted. And I just keep telling myself that because I go see horror movies there and I don't want to watch them in a haunted theater. But there was something moving around behind me, like 5-6 rows behind me. And by the end of the movie, it was right next to me. It was like the row behind me to the right of me. 100%. I have no doubt. I tried saying, no, it's just in your imagination. Just your imagination. No, it wasn't. It was a ghost. But anyways, there's a scene in Smile 2 where it's just like a big face. It's so goofy looking. It kind of looks like a large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure face. It looks so ridiculous. But it's so shocking. It's so shocking when it pops up. It's only on screen for a couple seconds. And I'm watching it on the big screen. It's the size of a Hummer. It's the size of a pickup truck. It's huge. And when you first see it, it's so goofy looking. You go, what? And then it stays up for an uncomfortably long time, which again is maybe like 3 to 5 seconds. It's not up there that long. But that face is kind of stuck in my mind. And then the scene with the dancers. There's a scene with these smile dancers. You're like, what? They're all doing a choreograph. Da da da. Brush your teeth. Floss your lips. Da da da. Dancing around. She's a pop star, so these dancers are possessed by the smile demon. I mean, it sounds dumb, right? But it's super effective. I'll get to the next story. I just got to talk about Smile a little bit more. The Smile demons have possessed the backup dancers, and they're chasing her down a hallway in a very dancey way. And then she looks at them. She's like staring at them, and they stop. And then another troop of dancing zombies or whatever they are, dancing possessed people, start coming through the other part of her living room, and she turns and looks at them, and they stop. And you're like, okay, so the rules have been set for this particular scene. If she's looking at a group of dancing smile demons, and they're real humans, right? They've been possessed by the smile demon. If she's looking at a group, they'll freeze. And then she looks over at this group and they freeze. And instantly your brain goes, I understand the rules of this scene. So it sets up the terror. It sets up the conflict because there's 10 people coming this way and 5 people coming this way. And each time she looks, the other group's going to get closer. Super effective. Well done. And this goes back and forth, right? And she's really trying to figure a way out of her hotel room? I think she's in a hotel room or her apartment, her penthouse suite, whatever. She looks this way. They stop. She hears movement. She looks over and then this group to the right of her freezes, but she hears the group in front of her getting closer. She has to turn and look at the group in front of her. They freeze. She hears the group to the right of her getting closer. She turns. They freeze. You understand the rules of the scene. Your brain's like, okay. And once those rules are established, once your brain's like, okay, how's she going to get out of this? As long as she's looking at them, they won't get closer, but there's a whole group to the flank, to her right flank. They're going to get her. Once these rules have been established and the dancers in front of her, they're crawling over a couch at this point, and she turns and she looks and they freeze, but they don't. They freeze, but then one of them reaches their arm up and into a lampshade and crushes the light bulb with their hand. So the room goes dark. So the movie had set up our expectation. As long as she's looking at them, they freeze. They can't move. But then it broke it. It broke the expectation in a creepy way. And then the chaos erupts. And she's completely overcome by the smile demon dancers. And we move on to the third act. A super effective horror. Super effective. You set up the rules for that particular scene and then you break them. And then there's chaos. Fantastic movie. It's a fantastic film. But both of those scenes stand out to me in a creepy way. In a creepy way. Let's just put it this way. I haven't been walking around my house without lights on. I'm like, oh, I have to go 5 feet. Better turn on 8 lights. In case one gets smashed by a smile dancer. Really good movie. I hope you guys go check it out. It was a lot of fun. Default Cecil, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind Grandma's house. Not a moment too soon, but I will tell you more about Smile. Yeah, just joking. Default Cecil, fire up this bad boy. We're leaving behind Grandma's house and the smiling dancing demons. Why don't you fly us all the way out to Pennsylvania? Dude, it's 11:08. I have a bag of vitamins I still have to take. I take a garlic supplement. You're like, damn it, Jason, just get on with the episode. You already had to throw away a 40-minute episode because you kept going off topic. Okay, I'll take my vitamins later. We're headed all the way out to Pennsylvania, and Default Cecil, go ahead and hit that time travel button. We're headed back to March 1886. Flying around. We're headed out to Pennsylvania. Specifically, we're headed to Lower Merion Township, Pennsylvania. We're about to meet a farmhand named Albert Cooper, who was called multiple times by this news article. This comes from an old-timey news article. This is a really interesting story. It's pretty trippy. They kept calling him a rustic. They kept saying that Albert Cooper was a rustic, and he hung out with other rustics, and then this group of rustics, and I was like, what? Which I didn't know this. Rustic, because I always hear it referred to as like homes. Like it's a rustic home or it's a rustic decor. It actually means a hillbilly. It means an unsophisticated country person. Which is hilarious, because I've only heard, I don't know, hilarious might not be the right word. Slapping your knee. Wow, Jason, it's the funniest thing you've ever said. A rustic means a bumpkin. An uneducated country person. And I always hear about like rustic as, I always thought it was like a fancy down home store type of place. Rustic this, rustic that. I've always heard it as, I don't, not necessarily like compliment, but not not a straight up insult. Now whenever people go, oh, this very rustic feel in this place, I'm like, what? You think hillbillies live here? The wrong turn hillbillies? Oh no, they're after me. I make a wrong turn hillbilly joke almost twice a week. I edit 9 of them out, so I'm keeping this one in. I make wrong turn hillbilly jokes all the time. Anyways, we should do a wrong turn marathon one of these days. I'll invite all you guys to Twitch. We'll watch movies. Farmhand Albert Cooper. He's a rustic, and he's walking back home. It's pretty late at night. He just had a nice date with a young lady. He's walking back, he's whistling a jaunty tune. The path from his date to his house was wooden. There's like a wooden pathway that ran alongside an old forest. And he's just walking back home, probably had a great night, needs to get back home and get some sleep. He's walking, but then he hears a mysterious voice call out, "Whoa, whoa, that's enough. That's enough." It's like, oh, is someone talking to me? Am I not supposed to be walking out here? What was that? He looks around, he doesn't see anything. What? Who would be out here is his question. What are they talking to? He starts to walk again. Whoa, that's, oh yeah, that is, wow, what's really going on over here? Oh yeah, stop. I was like, what the hell is going on, man? This is super weird. He's hearing someone telling horses to stop. And that's specifically what he's hearing. But he doesn't see anyone around. And then he begins to hear from somewhere in front of him. Always sounds like a demon. The Crypt Keeper is back for more. It's the sound of a horse neighing. And I mean, if you heard that sound in the middle of the night, walking all by yourself, you'd pee your pants. You would think the Crypt Keeper was coming after you. You wouldn't think horse. But he heard the sound of a horse neighing and the sound of a harness. Like a harness attached to a horse. He hears the telltale sound of the chains. He hears the horse. He hears the guy calling for the horse to stop. But what in the world? Who and where is this coming from? But just that moment. Yeah, let me read you this quote because I love old-timey newspaper stuff. Quote, "At that moment, the new moon," this is actually in the newspaper, this isn't a novel that I found, the quote. "At that moment, the new moon stole over the neighboring treetops, and in its misty light, he plainly saw the phantom farmer." Unquote. But here's the thing. The phantom farmer, while accurate, really undersells what Albert is seeing. Because this phantom farmer is 7 feet tall. He's holding a plow. So the plow is part of this apparition. And there are 2 horses attached to the plow. And these ghostly horses with eyes of fire walked in front of the man as he's plowing the soil. Albert is frozen in place, obviously. Like, even if this was just, if this was a normal human-sized ghost, that'd be enough. But he's a 7-foot tall phantom plowing with these horses, and the horses have eyes of fire. If they just had normal eyes, they'd still be terrifying. He's absolutely spooked out by this thing. He can't move. He's frozen in place. When the plowman and his horses and the plow itself all vanish, Albert once again is out there late at night all by himself, but not for long, because he runs the rest of the way home. The next night, Albert is at Silas's Brown's grocery store. And he's sitting there, he goes, guys, you won't I think it was probably more than a grocery store. I think there probably was a drinking spot for these rustics. He's like, guys, you won't believe what happened last night. And they're like, oh, you finally got lucky with Wendy? No! Well, yeah, I did. But that's not that's not the amazing part. Why would that be amazing? I'm great with women. No. The amazing part, the part you wouldn't believe, was that after I was walking home from Wendy's house, Albert tells you the story that I just told you. He probably left out some key details about him wetting his pants or trembling in fear. He goes, but I was a brave little boy. I stood there and I go, get out of here, 7-foot tall phantom farmer. And then he disappeared and I walked home and I didn't pee my pants at all. Let's go out and check for evidence. If you see a bunch of urine trail all the way to my front doorstep, that was not me. That was not me. It must have been somebody else. But he's like holding a bag, holding a big messenger bag over his crotch. They're like, you still didn't even change your pants. This is the next night, Albert. We know you peed your pants. Everyone knows that. He's like, aw. You could have changed them before you came to Silas Brown's grocery store. He tells this story, and people are like, dude, that sounds totally dope. Actually, like you're saying, there's a giant ghost on the edge of town. It's 1886. We really don't have anything better to do. Let's go out there. After Albert tells him this story, himself and 6 other dudes go out to that location. And they're hanging out, and hanging out, and hanging out, right? You know, this is the thing with paranormal. It's a lot of waiting. But they're sitting around for a while, and all of a sudden one of them goes, shh, look. It's him. The phantom farmer returns, but this time there is no noise. They see the man 7 feet tall. They see his plow tilling the soil. They see the horses pulling the plow forward, but it's completely silent this time. An interesting tidbit is that although it was silent this time, and last time Albert could hear all of the sound effects, it was quiet this time, but there was more detail to the apparition. There were things that Albert and his friends could see that Albert did not see on the first night. The phantom had long white hair and a beard that waved in the wind. They couldn't make out much of his facial features, though. His facial features, the detail there was kind of a blur, but they could make out these glistening eyes. They also said that most of his body was just a glow. So they couldn't tell what type of clothes he was wearing or anything like that. It's very interesting phantom that you can make out details like long flowing hair and the color. Long white hair. And a beard that they could see wave in the wind. Yet they couldn't tell if he was wearing corduroys or Oshkosh Bagosh overalls or anything like that. A lot of details on the head, some details on the face, and none anywhere else. The horses seemed to be breathing fire as they walked forward. Albert and his 6 compatriots are watching this scene when all of a sudden they begin to hear clop, 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 clop. The sounds of the horses' hooves hitting the soil is now starting. It wasn't there before. The whole scene was quiet, but now they can hear the horses walking. They can hear the hooves hitting the soil. But the most odd thing, the weirdest thing when you have a 7-foot-tall ghost and horses that breathe fire, as they're looking at all these details, they begin to realize something. The horses are leading the plow. The man is guiding it. This phantom image, this ghost, this phantasm, this ethereal entity is moving through the landscape. And in its wake is freshly tilled soil. They can actually see the ground being plowed. I don't know if the apparition vanished first or if they left. They're like bored. They're like, oh man, what's this just 7-foot-tall guy? Oh, Albert, we thought that this would be way cooler. He's like, isn't that amazing? They're like, it's kind of amazing. I don't know if the phantom vanished like it had the night before. I don't know if they left. I do know that they were very terrified. We can talk about it in kind of calm terms because the story's 200 years old. To my listeners in Pennsylvania, it might be more terrifying. They're like, oh, I live in that township. Ah. But, to the rest of us, it's a long ago, far, far away. They leave. They do leave at some point. And the next morning, though, they go, dude, we should go out and see what happened. Because we did see the ground getting plowed. Was that part of the phantom? Was that part of just this weird image? So they do. Albert, these 6 people, and at this point, it's the talk of the town, right? What else you got to talk about? You're like, oh, that Civil War ended. Don't have much to do ever since we stopped killing each other. But did you hear Albert, that rustic Albert, and all of his rustic buddies, they said that they saw a 7-foot-tall ghost plowing the soil. And people are like, oh, you had me at 7-foot-tall ghost. Didn't matter what you said after that. A whole group, a whole crowd goes out to that location the next morning, and what they see, the land is plowed. In fact, 1/2 of the field is plowed. And the residents of Lower Merion Township go and investigate this. They're looking at it, and what they came to the conclusion of is, while the lines, the plow lines, whatever they're called, while the plow lines weren't as broad as a normal man would plow them, because you can kind of use the plow and kind of angle it in different ways, they said it's not as broad as farmers of that era would make them. But, now they're just kind of nitpicking, right? It's a phantom. He's doing your work for you. This wasn't farmland. It was just a field next to this pathway. But they're being a little hypercritical of this phantom. He's like, I transcended time and space. I beat the laws of death itself. And you're saying, I'm sorry. It's not as broad as yours. They said, even though it wasn't as broad as a normal farmer's, they said it was deeper. And they said that the plow lines were deeper than you would see a normal farmer make, and they were definitely straighter. Much more precision in these plow lines than you would see in a normally plowed field plowed by a human. Deeper and straighter. So that story was posted. I got it from Phantoms and Monsters, which is a fantastic website. They cover a lot of cryptids, a lot of weird stuff, and they post multiple times a day. I always recommend people checking out Phantoms and Monsters. They got it because someone wrote into them regarding a newspaper article. So this is where we get into the interesting lineage of this story. I went and I read the original article, which was not printed in a Pennsylvania newspaper. It wasn't even printed in an American newspaper. There is one story about this that I could find. It was printed in an Australian newspaper called the Bathurst Free Press and Mining Journal. It's an Australian newspaper. It's published August 17th, 1889. And I have the link in there. You can go to the newspaper article, read it yourself. It was actually there was two articles kind of back to back. They were both American stories of ghosts. One was a guy was like a train light guy. He would like hang off the train with a light and go, whoop, whoopee, wee, yay. They're like, that's not a real job. He's like, I don't know, but I just love doing it. Pay me money. He ran like the warning lights or something like that. And then one day the train was going and he ran into a tree. Like he was like, look at me, everybody. I'm the warning light. And then a tree just obliterated him. He was leaning out the window and it just blew him to pieces. I mean, hitting a tree at 30 miles an hour is not going to be good for you. He blew up. He basically became human stew. And since that night, they've had a hard time keeping people working on that train as signal light guys because they're coming down this particular stretch and they would see a warning light hanging from the tree branches. And they'd be like, what? And they'd throw the brakes on because they think there's a bridge out or something's wrong. And then they'd get out, the train would come to a stop, they'd get out, there'd be nothing wrong, and they wouldn't even see where the light came from. And the people who were working on the train kept running into this problem, and they kept throwing the brakes. And they're like, what is going on? And eventually they would find out from somebody else, like the boss would never tell them, right? He needs to keep employees. Eventually someone would be like, oh, yeah, you work on that train route, don't you? Yeah. Hey, have you ever see that light in the tree? Yeah, I see it all the time. What's up with that? Is it like a practical joke? No, some dude exploded when he hit that tree doing the exact same job you're doing. You're seeing his ghost. Like, he's still up there with that lantern. And people quit the second they hear that story. So this train company had a really hard time keeping employees, so they wouldn't tell anybody that. An interesting ghost story, classic ghost story. That story and this one, The Phantom Plowman, were both published in this Australian newspaper. So here's the thing. I wasn't able to find any other source for this story. There was a book called Unnatural Phenomenon. Oh, I actually bought that book. It's called Unnatural Phenomenon, A Guide to the Bizarre Wonders of North America. And yeah, that was one of those books that I saw. You know, a lot of these books are out of print, so I try to pick them up. Picked it up. I haven't read it yet. That's part of my problem. I buy books and don't read them. But yeah, it's a lot of short stories. So it was published in the Bathurst Free Press and Mining Journal, an Australian paper. And then later on was referenced in Unnatural Phenomenon, a book. And now it's been talked about by Phantoms and Monsters and then us. So there's not a lot of sourcing for this. They all do seem to come from that, but I wasn't able to find like a contemporary American newspaper that published The Phantom Plowman. Doesn't mean it's not out there. I mean, we'd be talking about a paper for 1886, 1887, somewhere around there. Couldn't find it, right? I mean, American news was pretty full of all that Civil War stuff. You know, hard to tell a good ghost story when your president gets his brains blown out in front of 500 people watching a play. Like, it's pretty crazy stuff back then. I'll forgive them if they forget a ghost story. Fascinating story, though. And here's the way I want to wrap it up and wrap up the week. So let's go ahead and wrap this week up. I have a bit of a theory about this story. I don't have a lot of time to talk about it. You're like, Jason, you could go back and edit out all that Smile stuff. 10 minutes talking about Smile. Well, you know, I'll leave that in there. But I'll rush the ending. No, I'm not going to rush it. But I was thinking about this story. I think it's really interesting, right? Let's get right to the chicken fat on this bad boy. I think that it's possible that the Phantom Plowman was for lack of a better term, an ancestral guide. And let me explain what I mean. In the 1880s, people already knew the benefits of tilling the soil or plowing the soil and what you use that for. Actually, I don't know why you plow soil. Isn't that so you can plant stuff better? You kind of like get the nutrients, get all the delicious soil to the top. I don't know, I'm not a farmer. But by that point in society, people had been plowing fields for centuries. So it's not like these rustics were like, wow, what's he doing? We should try that on our own farms. Maybe that'll help. They knew what he was doing. They were able to measure their own plow lines against the plow lines of this giant. But let's go back 2,000 years, 5,000 years. Seeing this happen 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, however far back you want to go, watching basically a tutorial would help a civilization achieve a new level of technology or a new level of abundance in their food production or a new form of medicine. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself. What I'm saying is I've always found it curious that you would have shamans the world over. Someone would come to them and be like, my knees hurt. Look at my knees, they're all swollen. And the shaman looks down, and sure enough, the dude has big old swollen knees. And the shaman goes, oh, I know exactly what will help you. I have this ground powder. I got this stuff. There was like this tree that has this bark, and I would grind up the bark, and I turned it into this powder, and you're going to take this as a watery paste, eat it 3 times a day, and your knees will return to normal. Okay, doc, thank you. And we've seen medicine like that the world over. Medicine men, shamans, where they have these herbal recipes. And I've always wondered, well, how did they figure that out? And I've asked that question to people, and they go, well, it's like passed on through tradition. Like, they didn't figure it out. A shaman 3 generations before them figured it out. And I go, well, yeah, but I get that. How did the original shaman, how did the first medicine man figure out that this particular leaf is a pain reliever? Because if you imagine, I mean, I always, like, what were they doing? Just walking through the jungle, eating leaves, or yum, yum, yum. Oh, yeah, now my gout feels better. Plus, also, I just invented the diagnoses gout. Yummy, 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 eating the leaves, and then his knees feel better. You think about walking through a jungle or a forest or anything like that. I mean, nowadays people die from eating the wrong mushrooms. And you go, well, Jason, yeah, the shaman knows which mushrooms to eat. And I go, yeah, but how? And they go, well, it's passed down from generations. I get that. I understand that. I've had these conversations a lot in my life. How did the original shaman know which mushrooms to eat, know which bark to eat, know which trees, and how, even the thing, you figure out that this particular leaf is an antiseptic or it's a pain reliever. But it's not just that. It's turning it into the right form where it's effective. Whereas you may have a leaf that if you chew on it, maybe it numbs the mouth a bit. But then to turn it into the right proportion of a paste that can now be turned into a medicine that is the equivalent of an aspirin today, without putting too much in it and killing people. And it's funny because no joke, I've had this conversation multiple times over the decades because I find it fascinating. And I get 2 answers at the end. They just figured it out, Jason. They just figured it out. Or I'll hear other people go, well, a lot of it is actually accessed through vision quests. Like, they'll actually be like, I'm sure at some point one of these shamans had a vision, either through meditation or through eating the right combination of mushrooms as opposed to the wrong ones. And this knowledge was given to them from the spiritual plane. So it was a higher knowledge. It was their deities or some sort of universal force that they were getting the knowledge of medicine from. Which is funny because when we look at not just Greek mythology with the story of Prometheus, but in Christian theology, you have demons that are very specific. Like, they're like, this demon is specifically a medicine demon. If you wanted to learn about medicine, you would contact this demon. You would use this sigil, and you would contact this demon, and you would invoke him, and he would teach you everything he knows about medicine. So you see this all over the world, that there's higher consciousnesses or different entities outside of humanity who have knowledge that far outstrip the smartest human on earth. Which I would be more apt to believe that one, that at one point the shaman did meditate, and in a spirit quest he was led to a particular tree and instructed, turn this bark into a paste, and this can help cure your tribe of this disease that's currently affecting them. Because I do believe in a big spiritual component of humanity. I think you could say they just figured it out. There'd be a lot of dead shaman. It would have taken a lot of dead shaman and a lot of tribes getting wiped off the earth because the shaman failed or brought the wrong ingredient back and poisoned the tribe or made them horribly sick, and they missed the hunting season, and then they can't support themselves. It's a terrible winter. They all die. And then all that knowledge would be lost, and the next shaman 50 miles to the west could make the same mistake because he doesn't know what happened. These tribes would be unconnected. They wouldn't be talking to each other. So I was wondering, I wonder if this Plowman was, in essence, a tutorial. And I wonder if this has happened all over the world, where these were the deities that were described. And it's very interesting that the Phantom Plowman is 7 feet tall. And that has always been a story when we look at history and conspiracy theory and the paranormal of giants once walking the earth. Specifically in America. There's a lot of stories of giants in America. And it could have been the ghost of a giant. But because it's doing something and it's leaving its mark on the earth, it almost feels like they're, again, conspiracy cap fully on. This is even more weird than just the shaman having the vision quest. I think that's probably the most likely answer for how humans figured out certain things. I mean, humans inventing the wheel, humans inventing the airplane. Sometimes humans will have dreams and they'll wake up and they're like, oh my god, eureka, I discovered it. And they'll sketch something out, and you can ascribe that to have a spiritual component as well, or not. Just the brain in a relaxed state has these breakthroughs. But there are certain things like medicine, like food production, that really are more important for the development of early humans than flight. Right? I mean, if we invented airplanes in 30,000 BC, but we couldn't feed ourselves, we would have gone the way of the dodo, which surprisingly was a very vigorous and alive species back then. They would have evolved to be the alphas of the planet. I wonder, it could be the ghost of a giant, but I also thought, think about it. We even now think about the legacy that we're going to leave for the people long after we're gone. We have that seed vault. I think that's somewhere up in a Nordic country where it's basically samples of seeds. It's called the Doomsday Vault. It's seeds from all over the world. So if something happens, a new society, a new civilization, it's not just a society, it's a whole new, if humanity pretty much gets wiped out, where there's only 60,000 of us on the planet, you have to rebuild altogether. At some point, they could find this vault. Hope they don't hide it too well. It's under a bunch of bushes. They make it super hard to get to. And so that way, the environment can be replenished if it's ever just completely destroyed. There's scientists in America, scientists and anthropologists and linguists are trying to create a logo that 10,000 years from now, when we know language will be completely different, it'll be unrecognizable to what we have today. They're trying to develop a logo that says, warning, death, do not enter. But not using any language. They're trying to develop a logo that 10,000 years from now, if a human sees this, or an evolved dodo bird, they came back, if a human sees this logo, they know not to enter. And the reason why is because we want to put it on our nuclear waste facilities. And they've talked about it. They go, well, if we put a skull on there, a lot of times skull refers to a burial site, maybe a sacred site. So that might make future anthropologists, future people, because think about it, any records we have now, 10,000 years from now, even if the language is completely the same, the way we keep the records, think about it, what we've had just in our lifetime, floppy disks, cassettes. I remember I used to put a cassette into a computer and the cassette would read the information. We had cassettes, we had floppy disks, We had zip drives, CD-ROMs. I mean, if I gave you one of those pieces of hardware, if I gave you a floppy disk, you'd be hard-pressed on how to get the information off of that. And CD-ROMs are going the way of the dodo bird. They don't even come standard in laptops anymore. USB drives are going to change. You know what I mean? So, like, even if we could store that information on, hey guys, watch out, this is nuclear waste silo. Even if we had documents on it, they're going to be inaccessible 10,000 years from now, and language will change. So what kind of scary image can you think up of that's not going to make people curious that 10,000 years from now, someone will see that and go, I don't know what's in there, but it's not good. Whoever developed this super spooky, it's just the guy going boo every 3 seconds. It's one of those scary, it was one of those jump scare gifs. We're trying to develop that. And I'm wondering if we had advanced civilizations far, far in the past, if when they knew their time was nearing the end, they understood the age of giants was coming to a close. They didn't want their information to be lost. They didn't want the new humans, the puny humans who are coming up after them, to have to relearn all of this stuff. But they knew that their technology wouldn't last. The steel plows that they had created, and the wooden, the designs, the paper showing how they created all of this stuff, all of that stuff was just going to decay. So they were able somehow to leave behind a psychic impression. That's basically a YouTube tutorial. This is how you plow the land. This is how you find medicine. This is how you plant crops. Rotate your crops. You're supposed to rotate your crops every season to keep the nutrients. Leaving that knowledge behind for the next generation. And I mean, it wouldn't be like the pilgrims seeing this stuff. It would have been the ancient Assyrians seeing visions of basically a recording. And then that ghostly image, which you would attribute to your god or gods, right? If you saw a 7-foot tall phantom pointing to a particular tree and then putting his hands to his tummy and going, oh no, he's sick, and then vanish, you'd probably check out that tree. You'd go, oh, that poor, as you're peeing your pants, you have a loincloth on, you're just peeing right on the ground. You go, that's interesting. That phantom looked like he had a terrible stomach ache, and he was pointing at that tree. Maybe that means something. And you would 100% chalk that up to a deity. That was the medicine god. He was showing us these things. Because it's very interesting that this phantom plowman left behind the plow marks. And I also thought it was interesting, it wasn't as wide as the humans had been making them, but it was straighter, it was more precise. But here's the thing, if you didn't know how to plow, if this phantom had appeared way farther back in time, then you would have thought, well, I mean, again, after you have the heart attack, you would have been like, and that's actually an interesting thing. Like, he had this triangle type of giant triangle that he was pushing through the dirt that was attached to these horses. I bet the horses make it easier to do that. And you know what? That might actually help us plant stuff. Like right now we're using our hands. We're digging into the ground with our hands. Hands are all bloody. You're like, oh man, why didn't I think of this before? And then you copy that technology, and then all of a sudden you start plowing the land. And that is technology that would get passed on in your civilization, and it would go off to other civilizations because it would be so successful. The shaman who takes the wrong medicine and dies and his whole tribe dies, societies would keep making that mistake over and over again if they're in that same area. But if a society begins to flourish and is making the correct decisions, then other civilizations can go, why are your fields, like, why is your crop so great? And they're like, well, the god of food came down to us one night and showed us how to do this. That story is universal when you look at mythology. A god came down and showed us how to do this. And I'm wondering if that's what they saw. Not a god, but a tutorial that those who tamed this planet long before humans took control, left for us to make things a little bit easier. Just a conspiracy. I think it's pretty. I really like this story, and when I was reading it, I was like, "Oh, it's kind of cool." It's kind of like a little YouTube tutorial, and who knows? Maybe not. But we all share a passion for the paranormal, and I thank you guys so much for sharing it with me. We're all together in this. I really, really love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.